we're going to get started. Our featured reader this evening, Mark McMorris, was born in Kingston, Jamaica, and earned a BA at Columbia University and an MA in creative writing, and an MA and PhD in comparative literature at Brown University. He's the author of numerous poetry collections, including The Black Reeds, which won a Contemporary Poetry Series prize from the University of Georgia Press, The Blaze of the Kui, selected by C.D. Wright for the Contemporary Poetry Series, and a finalist for the Lenore Marshall Poetry Prize. The Cafe at Light, Entrepot, and the Book of Landings. And these three are in a trilogy that examine the legacies of diaspora, language, and lyric. McMorris's critical writing has appeared widely, and his fiction has been published in journals such as Callaloo and Conjunctions, and we are thrilled to have him here with us this evening. Thank you, Mark.
Hello. I'm really psyched. I didn't know about this literary salon, if I might call it that, gathering. You guys seem like a really spirited group. and this is so I'm very pleased to be here, and thank you for inviting me. Do I need to move anything? Am I good? Yeah. I'm trying to write, 15 minutes. I have about 15 minutes, Connie told me. What do I want to say? This trilogy that I wrote, Entrepot, Fragments from a Time Before This, and City of Palimpsests. It took as its basic theme, but also its basic poetic form, the Entrepot, which is, as you know, in terms of shipping, it's a transshipment location. Yeah, so an entrepot is not a destination. It is temporary hiatus, because you're on your way somewhere else. And I thought of the entrepot as a way of thinking about the non-stop movement, trajectory, vectors of migration happening in. Am I not speaking loud enough?
It's a little bit hard to hear in the back.
Yeah, I know. I can't. Yes, I heard that. Should I?
Do you think you could
should
hold
I
the
do?
mic?
I don't want
try
to hold
holding
it.
it?
No, but I'll.
Just step a little closer.
Can this come
Yeah.
up?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Look. Oh.
Yeah,
So pretty much. Okay.
Is it good?
Yeah.
A little lower?
Everything that I've said just up to now has been, what you didn't hear is most insightful and kind of brilliant commentary that you will never have heard. It's just a way of saying, somebody told me that, well, Mark, an entrepot, a refugee camp is an entrepot, but that's not, but you need to actually think about the suffering. You need to think about the entrepot as not a freely chosen place, but as a place of coercion, a place for people who are fleeing and have no choice and are compelled, and they get to the entrepot with the expectation of being able to move on, but of course they don't move on. So a refugee camp is, you might say, like the negative structure of what I had been thinking about. So this is going on too long. I'll try to be try to bring this to a close. Suffice it to say, I started to work on walls. I wanted to think about walls, and so I wrote a book. We're in the middle of writing a book called Ariadne. And Ariadne, as you know, is the daughter of King Minos, is that right? And Theseus and Ariadne got together, and Theseus is a hero from Athens. And Theseus gets into the labyrinth, and the way he finds his way through the labyrinth is because Ariadne had left a thread for him to follow. Anyway, that's enough of that. I'll just start reading. The thought of the world. The thought of the world. This is how a country goes bad. Reason does not govern the social order in the republic. The old philosophers thought reason, if spoken plainly, could alter the governing order of the world. Was it a comfort to believe that someone held the word in their mind to establish the world beyond thinking, the world on the ground upheld and upholding the mind in its cottage, the thought of the world apart from the mind, stable of immortal forces? And the long disputations of Abelard. What was the discourse? What was the virtue of speech had there not been a world to uphold and a mind to think of worlds that were not itself? The mind echoing the outside creak of tree frogs at night, the window and witness to tell the story of what it saw. Was there never a song, a dogma close to paradise, worthy of our tenderness? Were the tongues always deceived, and the spoils bestowed by conquerors the purchase of our blindness? On the wall is the writing by hand of the last poet to leave the last city behind. Her words are calligraphy. The drawing made by them, the letters of the writing, what it says is that here a hand once made a mark. O liberty to write your precious freedom like a faulty wire. Through the windows, the maple trees, shining and swaying. Lights sputter as the hand moves. Well then, to write dark letters on dark pages in the dark hall, it matters that the words hold on and the meanings cling like iron. No. I wrote that. Tell that's from a darkish time. Can you hear me better in the back? Yeah. Okay. This is called Things to Dream About. It's a multi-part poem. It involves Theseus and Ariadne, and then it switches location down to the Caribbean and comes back. And it has an epigraph from Shelley, the English poet Shelley, which the epigraph says, "Life, like a dome of many-colored glass, stains the white radiance of eternity." 1. The thread she supplied is black, like her hair in the window. In holding the thread, Theseus imagines the black of her hair. Framed by that hair, her white face gleams in the tunnel far ahead. He follows what he imagines, what he recalls of their meeting. The hand of the girl, in particular holding the spindle of thread, stays always before his eyes, white like clarity of mind, unblemished virtue of thought, the whiteness of Ariadne, inseparable from her body, the thread of her hair, the face that lights the hallway like a torch, the hand that holds the torch in mind, white on the spindle, the blaze of the torch, the body and the face, waiting on the hero, both before and behind, a torch made of daylight, the same as her hand, moth wings and leaf light, unstained by the dark. 2. A white body reposing on a divan or bathing in a mountain pool, inseparable from the forest light, nymph with gamboling fawn, an afternoon of insects buzzing, a scene to savor and prolong. Surrounded by old canvases, the painter's eye sees color as form, the radiance of skin, the white radiance of eternity, detached from particular life. In the studio, the naked model becomes a verdant symbol, her mind fixed on other things, her material body, her mind fixed on other things, her material body, but the vehicle of an idea. The idea is what he paints. To make the idea last, to make the torch blaze in language like a real fire. This is what the poet of Labyrinth on Knossos means to write at last. The radiance of Ariadne against the black cypress, the black hair in the window, the frame of wood and glass. 3. Theseus in the forest. Inside the labyrinth, he thinks of daylight, thinks of Ariadne, her white reclining, her detailed hands holding the thread, the power of her face as virtue's victory, stored in the body like salt in seawater. What color is the body that wanders the labyrinth? Can color be absent from things to dream about? 4. Women at Mavis back. This switches location. The dream of a previous life. Coming through the village, the road slopes past shops for dry goods and produce, and small fenced houses, winding to the pebbled basin and the banks of the river, the place we came to find. The air is cool in the morning, boulders washed smooth, the quick sluice of water in places, and the continuous sound a river issues louder because of the hills. At the river, the women wash clothes in the shallows in early light, the women bathing in a mountain pool. On the hillside, not fawns, but goats ambling stiff-legged. To put these women into singing words, how to make them last longer than oil paint, I recall the indigo hills, longer than labyrinth, the deceit in the dark tunnel without a torch, the smell of old books. What color is the body? Question for another day. Because we were just boys, the skin was not a prison. We saw them as a way of life, the women, neither black nor white, but indentured to a time before harsh color. Yes, to be outside of color. Yes, and to be outside of studios themselves and not an idea. And the bars of sunlight were not the iron of God's will, keeping them in their place. To paint these women for once, to make them last longer than the system that fashioned the village and their everyday tasks of economy, the planting and cutting back, the gathering of produce for market, the return at dusk to the younger children. To paint them as they are, that they can be as they are, in spite of the history that made us both. 5. The language of ruined cities. To demolish the labyrinth of whiteness by translation back to a time before this, the radiance of white bodies, the grammar of virtue imprinted in the skin, the dark absorbs the light. 6. Things that are white. Eggshells, underwear, blood cells, roses, bed linen, chocolate, teeth, a dove's feather, dishwater, Parian marble, summer nights in St. Petersburg, album, Aphrodite Conidos, paper, underbelly, picket fence, blank page, people, lampshade, eyeball, page without writing, Snow White, dwarf, White House, race, Desdemona, neoclassical buildings, flag, handkerchief, sea foam, burnt out star, dwarf, lilies, wedding dress, skin, virtue, night, purity, innocence, chastity, Venus, clamshell, Venus on clamshell, DeMilo, Elgin marbles, primavera, kitchen appliances, blinds, Aryans, cowboys, planters, inventors of civilization, southern sheriff, hands, Greeks, canvas, Kurtz's head, headstones in Arlington National Cemetery, the null set, azaleas, Virgin Mary, static on screen, Gunga Din's insides, light, limestone, moonlight, piano keys, dash out, skull, tiger, Arctic landscape, hope, capital, hero, etc., etc., etc. 7. These things in the language, in the crevices of the mind, like blood and breathing, keep alive the world in which we live and come to stand and speak the name we use for ourselves. The palace of King Minos on Crete, the busts from which paint has peeled and dissolved, and even the bodiless voices of epic poetry and tragedy belong to a white world at hand, a world not their own making, but ours, inasmuch as we see them the way we see each other. 8. Synonyms for white, white radiance of eternity. Beneficent, translucent, cold and pure, unstained, deathless, Athanatos, uncorrupted, superior or divine, blessed. 9. Prayer to walls. To go through the library, to navigate the labyrinth built over centuries, to face the Minotaur like a recurrent voice, like your spoken name, and still among the books and still in love with Ariadne, to have hope of exit, although the thread fall like an extinguished torch. 10. Things that are black. Skin, coal in a shovel, tar, negligee, trick baby, octoroon, shoe polish, cassock, strange fruit, where light stops, ink blot, mark against your name, power, space between stars, crime, Joe Christmas's blood in Faulkner's novel, tar baby, Mare de Dieu de Montserrat, Madonna, Balthazar, widow, soul, metaphysical condition, savages in the jungle, ghetto, undesirable neighbors, mammy, night, family as pathology, mood, Memnon at Troy, -face, Venus, cave, rotten tooth, suspect, cypress, hip hop, Central Park 5, Motown, depth of the ocean, heart, bile, president, look, gold, sugarcane cutter, -guard, -amour, -lung, underwear, Mero, devil, sphinx, perp, Hades, wilding, boxer, people, etc., etc., etc. A couple more. 11. The meeting with the girl imprinted a double wound, like a door into a garden that opens only once and closes. She was lost as soon as found. On the inside, he acted the hero in search of the girl's white hand, the whiteness of Ariadne rising from the walls of a dream. In the nightfall of the structure, he has forgotten why he came. 12. A white city beside the Aegean. The labyrinth is a library. The library contains drawings. Like pages, the marble throws back scenes from his arrival. The girl waits for him in the past, washing clothes at the river. Henceforth they meet in memory, or not at all, inside the halls, in images on the mosaic floors. How the tale ends he has yet to decide. Prayer in the Valley. to slip from inessential skin into the elbow of the hills, to see the wooden cottages beneath the poinciana branches, and the women at the river in early light, and the channel dark blue until the rocks, to make history forget this place. And then it's the last one. 14. Synonyms for black. Bestial, menacing, violent, savage, dark to the mind, primitive, ugly, uninhibited. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. All right, we will have 3 readers before intermission. Readers, remember to stick to your 5-minute limit. Courtney is right over there, but she'll be closer and closer and closer the further you get over your limit. She'll start coughing at you. Everybody will be looking at her instead of you, so might as well stay on time. All right, kicking us off in fiction is Matt Fleck. It's like a whole thing.
Hey everybody. First of all, thank you to the interlude for the invitation. I'm going to be reading an excerpt from a short story called Gradually, Suddenly. A photojournalist is back in her hometown of Beach in North Carolina to take over from her sister, taking over for their father, who has Alzheimer's. And her father was obsessed with Ernest Hemingway when she was a kid, and she doesn't really have anybody to talk to, so she's writing journal entries to Ernest Hemingway. Dear Hemingway, today I took some initiative. I dressed Dad, schlepped him into the van, and we made it to the inlet harbor before the morning radio shows came on. The foreman told me all the charters for the day were booked, but we were free to wait in case there were any no-shows. As I was walking Dad down the dock, a bearded man with a paunch called Dad's name and waved us over into the floodlight behind his boat. Apparently this fisherman, Martin was his name, had Dad for 10th and 12th grade English at Roanoke High. Dad introduced him to William Bartram, Rachel Carson, Mary Oliver, and your flowery passages, of course. Now Martin himself writes nature poems. He's even got a few published. So sad they made him retire, he said. Mr. Kane, it was Martin, class of '03. Mr. Kane. Dad gave him an expressionless glance. Martin sighed and spit into the water. Then he perked up. Were we looking to fish? We hummed out from the harbor. Then the captain accelerated, and we began to skip across the blank page of the morning. The coast melted into the horizon. The dawn filled the creases in Dad's face with red light, and I was convinced I saw flickers of a smile. He held my hand tight and tighter as we went. We were sharing the charter with another family, a sleepy group of 5. The parents became amiable once Martin explained the situation, and after their kids, 2 teenage boys and 1 younger girl, had reeled in a dozen tuna, the mom waved us out. They were glad to take turns, she said. It was a good thing I was doing. Maybe it was. I thought Dad and I were making progress. But when I stood him up, he clung to me as if I were the last branch before a long fall. His smile, if it had been there, retreated behind trembling, pursed lips. And yet, we were out there, on the ocean, our home, and he is my father. Martin helped me walk him over the deck to the fishing chair. He couldn't fish with his cast, but I'd asked Martin to simulate the experience, give him the feeling he hooked a big one, etc. The family of 5 shouted their encouragement. The captain slowed the boat and watched us. Dad's complexion greened. When we reached the chair, he glared at me. Then he looked surprised. Finally, he vomited on my jeans. We delivered Dad to the small cabin below deck. Martin got us a towel, expressed his regrets, kindly added that it wasn't my fault, and left us. I sat Dad down and made him sip from a water bottle. He had a chunk of oatmeal on his chin. I stared at it for a hard 2 minutes. I was willing him to realize its presence for himself, to wipe it off himself. I started shaking, but he didn't move. His eyes, confused and sad, looked off behind my right ear. Then he clicked his teeth together and hung his head. He seemed to be saying, "How could this happen? How could you?" After a while, Martin returned to let us know a pair of whales had surfaced near the boat. Do we want to see them? We helped Dad up the stairs. The family had their phones out and stood pressed against the railing, taking pictures. We joined them. The water was still. Then, 50 feet from the boat, 2 weathered hilltops broke the surface. I held Dad's hand and pointed. "See, Dad?" One of the whales blew a geyser into the sun. It conjured a rainbow. A rainbow. The siblings whooped, the parents kissed. But Dad leaned hard against the railing, so hard I had to pull him back. I sat him down on the starboard side, and Martin set a bucket at his feet. "Better if you stayed in the fresh air," Martin said. Then he asked what my plans were for the storm. I scanned the horizon. It was spotless. Survive? Martin gave a sour look. Today was an armistice with the weather, he said. They were calling for a tropical storm. I clarified. I avoided the news when I could. I hadn't heard. He looked at me like he had another question, lifted his hat to scratch his bald spot, then expressed his condolences for Dad. Half the reason he graduated high school, he said. We watched the waves juggle the sun. Down the deck, the brothers bumped chests in their life jackets. The little girl fell, picked herself up, and took her mom's hand. They were cute kids.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt. I'm multitasking, playing the role of the social media coordinator. We're looking for interns if anybody's interested. All right, next in fiction, Jake Winn.
Hello. Thank you to the Interlude for having me. This is a short story. Cheers to the benefactor. After the performance, Dorothy Gray sat in her underwear studying the script. The dressing room cleared quickly and Dorothy poured herself a bit of whiskey from the bottle on the vanity. Then a knock at the door and the writer came in. "I know," she said. "I know I got the radiator line wrong." "If you did, I didn't notice." He tried not to look while she put her dress on. "It really pulled me out of it," she said. "Trust me, you really couldn't tell." She took a coat off the rack. "Pity about the audience, though." "It happens," he said. "Hopefully we'll get more tomorrow." "At the matinee?" They walked together down the Bowery and turned and crossed the avenue headed east. Dorothy pointed across the street. "You see that old hotel, the one with the gilded ceilings? Why not let's stop in there and have a drink?" It was crowded inside, but there was room enough, and a jazz singer performed on a stage in the corner. "This place is a real furnace," Dorothy said. Theo looked the menu over. "They're charging tourist prices." Nearby, 3 tall women stood holding brightly colored drinks in thin glasses. "Have some of these," one of the women said. "The man in the blue suit over there, he just keeps them coming." Dorothy and Theo took a table near the window. "You don't think there's something in them, do you?" "Oh, come on, Theo. You shouldn't be afraid to live every once in a while." She picked up her phone and sent us a message to her roommate. "See," she said, "our trail of breadcrumbs." Then the singer announced a short break, and the man in the blue suit made for the door. "Wait here," Dorothy said. "I want to talk to him." Theo finished his drink and followed her outside. It was cold, and they were both without coats. The man was smoking a cigarette, and Dorothy asked if she could bum one. His tie was open, his collar stained. "I guess we should thank you," Dorothy said. "You sent those drinks over, and we had some, so." The man pulled on his cigarette, and a cool wind washed his red face. "I'm Dot, by the way. This is my friend, Theodore." The man nodded. She stuck out her hand. "You are?" He shook her hand. "Maurice." "It's really a fantastic hotel. I pass by it every day on my way to the theater. You must be here on business, if I had to guess. What is it you do for yourself, Maurice?" "This and that. I invest in good ideas." I'm practically sure of it. Well, we've just come for the opening night of a fantastic play that Theo here wrote and I play the lead in. He smiled and put his cigarette out and opened the door. Then he put his hand on her back when she passed by him. The music had started up again and some people were dancing over in the shadows. This singer is really fantastic, Dorothy said. Don't you think so? Yes, Maurice said. I've been sending her drinks all night. He brought them to a table over near the stage. Hey man, what's your name again? Theo. Go on and get us another round, would you? Dorothy smiled, and Theo agreed, and he ordered a double and told the bartender to pour himself something nice too, on Maurice's tab. We should have a toast, Dorothy said, to victories in business. Maurice raised his glass. How long are you in town for? You should really come and see our play. I'm not going to do that. She laughed. He's funny. Isn't he funny? Yeah, Theo said. He's hilarious. Well, if you are going to see it, you better see it soon. With our luck, there's no telling how long it'll go for. Maurice placed his hand on Dorothy's leg. Well, she said, I think I'll use the little boys' room. You two girls behave yourself, won't you? She left, and Maurice loosened his tie further. Hey, man, how much do I gotta pay you to get lost for a while? Theo stared at the man in the wrinkled blue suit with the stain on his collar. How about another round, Theo asked. When Dorothy finished in the restroom, Theo was waiting for her in the hall. Go on, get your coat, he said. What about Maurice? Told him you had chlamydia. You did not. Maybe not, but I told him we were leaving. She looked back at the table by the stage. One of the three tall women had made her way over there already. Anyway, you shouldn't have done that. They started walking again. Theo had his hand stuffed in his pockets, so she offered him the coat. Don't be a hero, she said. He said, you didn't have to sit there and take that. She said, I could have decided that on my own, thanks. He nodded. It's just that you think they're one way, but they only ever want one thing. I wanted something from him too, I suppose. She offered the coat again, and this time he accepted. You want to get something to eat? It's cold, and we have a matinee tomorrow. Come on. He reached into his pocket and pulled out Maurice's credit card. Can't be afraid to live every once in a while. She laughed, wrapped her arm around him, and led the way to the old diner at the corner of Houston and Bowery. There they ordered heaping plates of eggs and assorted meats, coffee, pancakes with cream and fruit and butter. And when the bill came, they paid it, and they tipped generously, and left the credit card on the table. In the back seat of the cab, Dorothy rested her head on Theo's shoulder. I have a feeling, Theo said. We're going to have a big, full audience tomorrow. Dorothy smiled. Yes, she said. I feel rather optimistic.
Next up, we have our July Authors Corner Spotlight, Diana Rojas, here for her book, Litany of Saints.
Hello, everybody. Today ends my my July Authors Corner Spotlight, and I wanted to thank the Interloop for giving me this opportunity to promote my book, to talk about my book, and to read from my book. It's been wonderful. Thank you. My book, Litany of Saints, is a triptych of novellas that tells the stories of migrants who face challenges to their perceptions of who they think.
Get it right in your cheek.
You got it. Who they think they're supposed to be, and who they actually want to be. Is that working yet? Yeah. Can you hear
Lean
me?
into it. Lean into it. Don't whisper.
Okay. The first novella, The Lives of Saints, is told by Ruth, whose husband gets a devastating diagnosis and leads her to reckon with her lifelong inability to let go of the conservative, religious culture that her family had, that she had been raised in, and not embrace what her husband wanted her to embrace, which was a new American life. This is what it takes to become a saint. First, you have to wait 5 years after the saintly person dies to make sure all of the hullabaloo about them is real. Then, someone asks the local bishop to start investigating. If the bishop thinks there's some merit in the stories about the holiness associated with the person, he sends the case up to the vicar of Jesus Christ himself, the Pope. That's when the deep dig starts, and the Congregation for the Cases of Saints looks into whether this person's life was so exemplary that their example inspired prayers in others. Then finally, the miracles. If a person's prayer, interceded by this holy person, was answered, then it's positive proof that the candidate for sainthood is in heaven. A second miracle, and it's pretty much in the bag. The candidate gets a halo. But it's a rigged game. It can be rushed too. No need to wait 5 years if the evidence is so overwhelming. That's when there are many miracles and many people who come in contact with the supposed holy person had their prayers answered. But the most important tool to becoming a saint is having a champion. That person, way before his or her death, who has held the saintly candidate up as an exemplary human being, all of whose humanly flaws have disappeared. And that champion has to be a person who has never been shy about telling anybody and everybody about the suspected saint's goodness. My brother Joaquin was our saint. Mama was his champion. He'd never have to wait 5 years because she put a halo on him before the youngest of us were even born. My first memory is from when I was 4. My mother was dressed in a Carmelite nun habit, brown with a rosary embroidered on its apron, in return for some favor she had asked of the Virgen del Carmen. She was also very pregnant, so maybe the habit and supposed payback were a convenient way to fit into something, anything. She was handing my sister Lucia and me over to my grandparents, Don Jesus and Doña Juana, at their house on the banks of the Tiribi River in San Jose, Costa Rica. We lived on the far edge of their land and relished any opportunity to play uninterrupted on their little farm. Mama would stay home confined until giving birth to my baby brother, Tony. With Tony, we became 4, 15 years between the oldest and the youngest. First Joaquin and his twin Jesus, the baby who didn't even make it to 6 months. Mama grieved for a decade before having Lucia, me, and Tony in the space of 5 years. But no number of babies could replace the baby my mother had lost. Joaquin became a stand-in for his dead twin, embodying all of the dead baby's potential. He became her obsession. When he was miraculously unhurt after a fall from our grandfather's horse at age 2, Mama became fanatical about him and identified in him every virtue and even some magical powers. In the official version, Joaquin was the savior of the family. When as a baby he survived the scarlet fever that took his twin, Mama tacked on the dead baby's name to his. She henceforth was the only one to always refer to him as Joaquin Jesus. When he was a teenager, Mama would tell friends who came to her with problems, "Take it to Joaquin Jesus, he'll know what to do." If someone needed divine intervention, she'd say, "I'll tell Joaquin Jesus, he'll pray for you." Later, it would be Joaquin Jesus who would be credited with having the pluck and ambition to drag his family out of the poverty caused by our father's drinking. He was the one to lead his family out of Costa Rica and into the promised land, the US of A. The godly Joaquin Jesus, who not only must have led the soul of his twin out of limbo and into heaven, but he also delivered us all to success. Joaquin Jesus, my mother would say, he's a saint, thinking never of himself, but always of others. Our older brother was the lodestar. That was the history that had been codified since I was a child. It was the origin story that the family had chosen to believe. None of us thought to challenge it. But even back then, when I was young, I think I doubted it. The difference between him and the rest of us was that he had been chosen by Mama. She had made the rest of us bit players in our own lives. We didn't know we could break out of those roles. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you to everyone at the inner loop. I could just hold it, maybe. Is that all right?
Whatever you like.
Is that easy? Okay.
All right.
Now I can dance, too. Yeah, I'm here to promote the Atlas of Remedies. You should all buy it. Now I'm going to read some poems, all right? Apparently, they're a little short on, they're heavy on fiction tonight, so I'm a double threat now. So I'm going to try to give you some, a wintry poem, or I think of it as a winter poem, and one that I think of as a spring poem. And then the last one is very fresh and is sort of my way of saying thank you and goodbye to the summer. All right. This first poem is in a chapbook called Mothership. It's coming out next month. This poem is called The Wrong House. Here, somehow, I have mistaken a long dark block in a city that is not at all my home for a street elsewhere, in a town far across the sea, a littered stretch of road where pigeons and hookers and heels perhaps struck by still. And once at least, there was a shop where, long ago, I bought an ounce or two of fresh, loose-leaf Earl Grey tea to bring home to you. The pot we made remains fragrant in some chamber of my mind, where the lamps burn bright, the fire warms our thighs, and we talk of nothing. But what's this street where the tea shop is not, is never, and the doors are locked, and you are not? Nor pigeons, nor light to see, but the glow from an upstairs window. It spills out dimly over me. Behind the pane, a pair of young lovers kiss, perhaps over their own pot of tea. Its bouquet afloat in their cozy room, scenting their tender hour. What did we say when it was our turn, our hour? What were our words? Was that even me fixing the tea? Was that even you? My love, I cannot any longer see our own faces, cannot hear our voices. Are they up there, behind that lit glass? Is that our life steeping in the wrong house? Pup in stream. By chance my eager gaze alights upon a pup who likewise looks at me with eyes made bright with need, ears raised to catch my cluck of tongue. It's fun to hurl the stick upon the stream's slow eddying for him to fetch. He knows what I know too. In this day's air, good things fly near. No golden pockets, nor a treat, but what my own two hands can make from forest leavings, or from words picked up by accident in creekside thoughts, or caught mid-flight above the waving tops of trees. Sweet pup, your eyes make mine more keenly yearn, more keenly see. Midstream you swim toward me. Let's swap your treasured stick for this new poem. Okay, this one's really new. My happiness herself. I doubt were I a god, I could arrange the swimmers who dot this gray-blue bay in a more providential pattern. A grandiose word, providential, to use on a Tuesday under a sky so bland, by a lake mottled with goose droppings and weeds. The haze here offers no sublime views of mountains or clouds. Even the humans in this picture, we can presume, are what the uncharitable among us might call ordinary, flabby, slow of step, lacking in distinction. I want it known that on this day, in this Midwestern water, a miracle is unfolding. Chance has assembled the scene as perfection requires. A boy in trunks leaps off a distant pier, making a little sob of a splash. Nearby, two shapely legs rise from the ripples and point infallibly in the direction of the good, as a straw hat serenely glides along the dune's ridge, and unseen currents of sultry air nod through a scoreless game of nothing played by 3 silent men. All around them, oaks and hemlocks hum in tune with the grasses dotting the sand in wavy green tufts. Not one blade of grass or body or branch ceases to move, yet even the moment's manner of dissolution rhymes with the impossibly necessary mutt whose bark punctuates the quiet, the way a comma plows the water of thought, the way, stroke by stroke, the wide, welcoming arms of a swimmer pull through the blue expanse. She vanishes into the sweet zenith of things as they are, into the substance of things to come. On the rim of the bay, a boat idles, festooned with poles long ago cast to catch stray thrashes of fun. No wars have ever begun on earth. The tragic arcs you might expect have been buried in sand by girls with shovels in hand. I would not be surprised if my happiness herself rose out of this unassuming bay, kissed me full on the mouth, and told me my true name. Thank you.
Alrighty. I lost my program. Oh, it's right. All right, so now we are going to hear from a few of our summer residents who each spent a week at the Woodlawn and Pope Leahy houses in Virginia, and were inspired by the space and wrote some stuff, and we're going to hear what they've been working on, which is really exciting. Before we get to the first reader, we'd love to invite Heather from Woodlawn up to say a few words.
Hello, how is everyone tonight? My name is Heather Johnson. I'm with Woodlawn and Pope Leahy House. I want to thank the Interloop for this long-standing collaboration that we've had at Woodlawn and Pope Leahy House. I've been at the museum for 7 years, and so obviously this partnership has been a part of what we do every summer at Woodlawn, and we couldn't be more thankful. I will say Woodlawn and Pope Leahy House, we are 2 sites of the National Trust for Historic Preservation. We own 28 sites across the country. And I will say this collaboration means a lot to us for a lot of different reasons. We deal with some very difficult histories at Woodlawn and Pope Leahy House, especially as a former site of enslavement. We have been working hard to uncover a lot of histories that we had not known previously. And it's, when we have the writers and residents come and be a part of what we do every single day at Woodlawn, it helps inspire us. It helps us to see the histories through a different lens, through a creative lens, and be able to come back to sometimes those difficult histories that we look at and think about every single day with new, fresh eyes. And I couldn't be more appreciative of all of the writers and residents that we've had this year. I had so many amazing talks with each one of you in the times that I was there. And I also want to thank James Wells. Stand up, James. James spent many hours preparing research, history, resources for each one of the writers and residents, so that you could do that very important work, creative work that you were doing every day. And so we're just thrilled to be here, be a part of this experience, and I'm going to pass it on to the writers.
Tell people to come visit.
Oh, yes. So Woodlawn and Pope Leahy House is based in Alexandria, Virginia, and we're open Thursdays through Mondays, 10 to 4. We have hourly tours of both Woodlawn, house from 1805, and Pope Leahy House, which is a Frank Lloyd Wright Usonian home. So please come, visit us, and hopefully we'll see you there.
so much, Heather and James. And with that, I'd like to introduce Charlotte Van Schaack.
Hello. I also wanted to say thank you to the Interloop and to Heather and James for just giving me this opportunity. A lot of the writing that I generated while in my residency week was, I went in hoping to write about the way that we tell and reflect on history, and I was hoping to do it from observation, and then a lot of my writing ended up growing from the conversations that I had with different people who were working there and from reading past residents' blog posts. And so these 4 poems I'm going to be reading you are a sort of reflection that I had on those different interactions I had and how I learned about what this type of what this interaction with history means to me. So the first poem is called Writing on the Wall. Against the fear of a haunted place, everyone is trying to become a ghost. As in, the paid workers of this house left names on beams in the attic. As in, the company's name inscribed upstairs in looping scrawl reminds you of your mother's absent-minded rush to sign report cards. Our lives are all about making trade-offs, knowing that we're going to die, scrambling and wanting to be seen. A century later, without particular care, you mumble the names of a palpitation of realization inside you. Whistling ghostly air trails in. Your spine convulses at the sensation. There's no helping it. If you listen, you might still hear the sound of chalk. In addition to the Woodlawn and Borquaye houses, there is also a fairy house version of the Borquaye house on the grounds, and this is a poem about that. It's called Fairy House Lost to the Woods. Earth eaten and slung around a stump, walls tilt themselves apart like parties at war. The fairies only half know what they're losing in the marine clay. The house slant stands, the model of the beautiful Borquaye, complete with acorn lumps for Usonian shape, writing space, built into hill cooling, 2.5 kids, a carport for 1, an ambling moss flat roofed. Brought from the inside out, eviction notice is coming. Fairies see the kitchen turn to compost, withered away from their needs in the first place. Now they prod the earth, the trees, blueprints to carve out their own ringed hollow. The house of whittled and woven bark sits in cicada song, borrowing space until the rent for this life is no longer paid notice. I have one called Great White Oak. When the oak, after season and season of gentle green florals waving, has run dry, it tips with time to mean simple hollowness. Each day, branches sway over shame and terror without shame despair. So much has changed where it stands. Landscapes harboring sadness have made less a stir than tales stitched to their hills. In this stretch of memory, etch the wails onto the record, make pain part of training for the ghost walking tour, pace it into the past, then push through to boast beauty and entertainment, crowd on bent root systems, wipe off guilt in clumps like red clay after the rains spray. A pipe dream, shovel scoops the abyss of washed history sold by masses. With so much care, see how this massive tree will die. And then I have one more, which is a great demonstration of what I do when I run out of ideas for what to write about. This is a sonnet called Frank Lloyd Wright Makes Delicate Love to Himself. Frank Lloyd Wright makes delicate love to himself, and by himself I mean the house he has built, perfect for his own height. Well-endowed ego, still walking in, muscles and teeth meet bookshelf, resapping the cypress. Hands clasped at the 12th hour of the clock on the mantel wilt and rise above his incessant groaning. Lilt in the same rhythms as his naming himself. Jig run, working the saw, every joint arranged, this Florida wood gets named democratic for its compact vision to fix the deranged. This is America, dramatic with purpose, went on Frank. His ambition changed just then, leaving the same finish erratic.
Next in nonfiction, we have Amanda Borquaye. Did I say that wrong?
Like I practiced! It's a last name that looks a lot harder to pronounce than it actually is. Thank you. Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Amanda. I was also fortunate enough to be a resident this summer at the Woodlawn and Borquaye House. And at orientation, I let them know that I was interested in the very answerable question of, do people belong to land or does land belong to people? And sort of the dichotomies and discrepancies that exist within that. And that led me to think about how land is often something that an ideology gets projected onto, and how we often conscript and co-opt people's bodies to fit that narrative. And so that led me into my own personal narrative. So with that being said, I will be reading an excerpt from an essay about how I grew up eating 7-Eleven hot dogs instead of my immigrant mom's food. I could blame my father for the fact that I did not grow up eating my mother's food, but I don't. Tied to her back like a cocoon, I was often lulled to sleep by the sounds of wooden spoons sliding around open drawers, the rhythm of knives striking cutting boards, the whoosh of a vent meant to dispel the fragrances permeating throughout the house. When I was older and could make myself useful, Nana, please light the candles for me. The kitchen became my crib. I was hugged by the distant warmth of steam escaping from an opened pot. The shuffle of my mother's feet from stove to sink to stove again, we don't use oven much to prepare our food, supplied a calming tune. For the preparation, I was present, but for the consumption, I protest I didn't like what I had neglected to try. My father, eager to appease his child, would pile me into the back seat, minty green scrub swishing all along the driveway as we headed to the local 7-Eleven. The tubular pieces of meat glinted under a heat lamp. They rested in the crevices of a greasy rotator belt before finding a home between the wings of a hot dog bun, adorned with a squiggle of ketchup. My mother's lament, 4 girls, but the little one will not eat her food. I'm relieved my nephew shows no signs of feasting on gas station hot dogs like his aunt did as a child. He makes excellent use of what little teeth he has, the tiny mounds of white that periodically poke out of tender pink gums, hard at work to eat morsels of his grandmother's creations. Though words haven't yet formed from his mouth, his jewel-jiggled chin communicates for him. He wants more. He consumes the bits of love I declined. In small victories, maybe he will resist the softening impact of this land. It is because I am here that I am soft. I don't know how to fearlessly clutch a knife and slide it valiantly along a fish, freeing scales from the clinging grasp of flesh. I don't know how to pound fufu, though I watch almost in trance as the neighborhood aunties gather on our steps, a dip of the palm to quickly shape and turn the starchy blob, moving their hand just in time before the strike of a wooden stick comes crashing down with a thud. What seems natural to all women back home seems forced to those of us growing up here. Patiently, my mother teaches her firstborn how to grind peppers, her tone encouraging yet firm as my sister struggles to match the pattern of mashing in the mortar and pestle. I fail to embody the rituals and rhythms to which I have spent my whole life bearing witness. Replication without precision and purity, mere mimicry rather than mastery. That which is sacrosanct is now sullied. I am the dilution of generations' worth of practice. I admire that which I cannot actualize. In love, my mother takes my hands, kisses them gently, notes that they are smooth and soft, notes that we are living in a land where she toiled so I won't have to. On my yearly visits back home, my extended family members line up to greet me. They swoop me in their arms, and I sink into their softness and brace myself for comments on what I will eat and when. Sweet smiles turn to slight frowns as I'm still too lanky for their liking, like a beanstalk. We congregate under the gazebo, and I tease my mother for her heaping servings, bowls of soups filled to the brim with sizable pieces of fish poking out. She pinches her fingers together and places them in the center of her palm to demonstrate my own special serving size. But I don't feel special. I want her to look upon me disapprovingly as I sit beside her at the table where everyone else prepares to eat her creations, and I chew on whatever I manage to make from the pricey imported ingredients she got at the Westerner grocery store just for me. She looks upon me with love, patience, and understanding I don't have for myself. We don't write down our recipes. The recipes are carried within the muscles of their makers that remember them intimately. A particular grip on a wooden handle, a fearless way of plopping objects into ferociously hot oil, the blade of knives delicately dancing close to skin but never daring to break it. My own muscles have not seemed to inherit these instincts. I hum the sweet melody of the song, never recalling the words that identify it. My mom always greets me over the phone with, "Have you eaten?" It's as if she senses some emptiness. We chat about mundane things like who's getting married and who she ran into at the grocery store until I tell her I should get going, and she'll ask me again, "Did you eat?" I'm not sure how to tell her that I wish I had this fervor for food, for it to envelop me and hug me while I'm away from home, for it to feel and smell and sound like her, for it to tell me the stories of my family I fear I will forget, for it not to feel like a burden simply to sustain myself. So I, her reformed gas station hot dog's daughter, tell her, "You already asked me that." Thank you.
I'm short. Next in nonfiction is Bex Pachl. So thanks to the Interloop and Heather and James from Woodlawn for their thoughtful leadership, which made this possible. This piece is about Woodlawn and perspective and George Washington, but I'm not going to give you much more information than that because I think it's self-explanatory, and I said what I said. This is called The Truth. The philosopher Plato once began with the sun and a cave. I begin with the windows. Windows of unique shapes and patterns define Woodlawn, or at least they defined it for me. As a writer in residence, I'm here to grapple with this plantation's long, complex, and painful history. On the second floor of Woodlawn, there's a small, nearly empty room with a few desks tucked in towards the walls. The walls are a soft green, like a handful of seafoam or the shell of a long-forgotten Easter egg. Inside, there's a large glass door with a window pane shaped as a half circle on top, making an arch-shaped opening for light to seep through. Over many centuries, Plato's allegory of the cave and many questions like it have sought to grapple with the gap between reality and experience. Reality, however you choose to define it, is continuously fractured and refractured through memory, historical context, like beams of light through a window. While we may seem to clearly enough through a window, the gap between the world outside and in will always remain. Perspective, Plato reminds us, is everything. When people think of the Woodlawn Plantation, they think of George Washington. Despite never seeing the house built, this land was part of his initial acreage for his Mount Vernon plantation. There's more to Woodlawn than its windows. There's also more to Woodlawn than George Washington. Perhaps, though, there is something there in our desire to investigate,
to turn towards George Washington, the way I'm turning towards the green room as the light shines in at certain times of day. Interpretation is like a dance, a process constantly in motion, much like light streaming in through a window. But what happens when that interpretation is made harder, nearly impossible? We have precious records of the enslaved people of African descent who lived and worked on Woodlawn, building their lives in the face of precarity and violence, but so much of their lives elude us, even today, even still. Woodlawn, the plantation, remains pristine and preserved, but the quarters where these enslaved people lived, their tools, their places of worship, their testimonies, are mostly gone, vanished in the rushing river of history. And yet, when people think of the Woodlawn plantation, they think of George Washington. In his life, Washington protects the institution of slavery. He owns enslaved people beginning at age 12. His power, prestige, and legacy are a machine, and it is the lives of enslaved Black people who turn its cogs, sacrificed on the altar of its efficiency. In the room where I write, a small window shaped like a singular eye, wide open, looks out on the initial front of the house, over the hill to a sea of trees which conceals nearby Mount Vernon. Towards the end of his life, George Washington wrote, quote, "The unfortunate condition of the persons whose labor in part I employed has been the only unavoidable subject of regret," end quote. In one of the paintings that hangs in Woodlawn, a young boy is pictured walking down a dirt path with a dog by his side, pointing backwards behind him towards a deepening sunset. The boy in this picture is Edward Sonny George Washington Butler, a descendant of George Washington. Almost all of George Washington's descendants, boys like Sonny, grow up to become men who fight for the Confederacy. Nearly all of them die in battle, defending something fundamentally indefensible. So if we are going to interpret, I suggest that we bring forth all the facts, all of them, about the misery, the violence, the way George Washington could have done more, but did not, built a nation out of ideals, but could not and would not see the shared humanity of those who laid its bricks. In the seafoam green room, the window has a design that makes the half circle appear like the sun, lines shredding out just like sunbeams. In the portrait of young Sonny, if you look closely to where he points, there in the midst of the deepening sunset is a house. The house he's pointing to is actually Woodlawn, and it made me think that perhaps all roads lead back to Woodlawn and from there back to George Washington. And even if that's true, I propose something different. I believe that it is never too late to choose something different, to see different, to step outside of our metaphorical cave or window and reorient ourselves to a new idea and perspective. Though I have left Woodlawn, I can still see all the windows. I see the house, the bricks, the trees, the light, and the absences, which speak too. There is beauty in the fact that when a perspective gets too limiting, we can step outside and begin anew. I hold my imperfect gaze for just one moment longer, and then I let it go. Thank you.
And next in poetry, Sean Felix.
Oh, all right. Hello, everyone. I just wanted to say thank you once again to the Interloop and to Heather and James and Woodlawn Borquaye House and the National Trust. It was truly a wonderful experience to be there. The work that I did there, the research that I ended up focusing on was actually on the children of Woodlawn. There were a number of children who were actually enslaved on the Woodlawn plantation. And in my work as a poet and as a researcher, I've actually been trying to give voice to the children of the enslaved, both at Woodlawn and in other places in the surrounding area. So what I'm going to read is actually, it begins with a piece called A Requiem for the Enslaved, which is a renga, which is a type of Japanese linked poem. And then it actually is going to focus on two children, and it will expand into more children as I continue working on this project, Abraham and Suki. Requiem for the Enslaved. Come find me in the tall singing grass, oh blood brother. Blood droplet cattails, the white door opens slowly on ghostly smiles. Oh, ghostly brother, the walls are falling into my black hole bedroom. The white petals of the morning dogwood shudder as I pass. Blazing pink footsteps run along the river's edge, back to you. March in lockstep with ankles chained to wrists, the boatman's chime. In your prison, please don't offer me heaven while I bleed. Please don't offer me heaven while I bleed. I'll find it myself. As a hummingbird carries the weight of angels on the wing. Abraham, age 8, Nan's child, a memory of goodbye. Bluebirds fly through the air, finding freedom. The breeze sounds like a river through the tree canopy. That sound and movement of air across my face makes me think of my mother. I remember the river slowly pushing its waves against the side of the boat as she marched up the gangplank on a journey that would carry her away from me. When we embraced each other, when she told me to be strong, we said that in time we would see each other again. But we both knew that her descent into the ship meant that on this earth we would never see each other again. If only I could ride the air like the bluebirds. If only freedom could be a wish. And lastly, Suki, age 5, Dulce's child. Into the forest and then back to the house. Rough-hewn stairs descend to the forest path. Here we may laugh. Small frogs in the murky creek, a soft splash. Staring up the black walnut trunk, my skin is like yours. Orioles flutter in the distance, and I stop to watch them take me in. One rustles in the fallen leaves, stirring the soil in search of a meal, while another bathes in the sunlight that snakes through the trees. I love the shadow dance here as the trees grow larger, reaching for the sun. There is play when others don't seek to bind, where a child can learn what children are meant to know, like how a woodpecker can scuttle sideways down a sapling, and how slowly to move so that the frogs don't know you're there. A butterfly lands on my nose. We all grow up. Someday I will grow old too. Black and blue, another butterfly flutters. Sometimes these colors can be kind. Red-throat turtle ambling through the seedlings, the grace of patience. A fly wrapped in silk on the forest path, a dinner gift. Nellie's music. To hear your music, how could something so beautiful come from someplace so cruel? The clock sounds 12 in the hall. I cannot leave, nor can you, for the doors of this land are always closed to us. Your jailer, sin, my jailer, fate. Thank you.
Let's have a round of applause for all of our readers. Thank you all for coming out. One quick thing that we have to do is pull the raffle ticket from all you lovely, generous people out there who donated to us. And you're going to get a tote bag. Here. Oh, do you want to grab it?
Sure.
Abby's going to grab it.
This is Abby.
So Abby, give Abby a round of applause.
Okay, last four numbers 0632.
Have to be present to claim it, so
alright,
next
alright.
one.
Next.
Going once, going twice.
0634.
I heard a whoop.
Is there a
So Rachel wasn't kidding. We are on the lookout for an intern who can help us with our social media outreach. So if you are interested or know someone who may be, please shoot us a note at hello@theinterlooplit.org. We also will have gala tickets on sale starting September 1st, and we hope to see you all there. In the meantime, have a great couple weeks.